Are you ready to validate your expertise in the Java Spring framework and ace your certification exam on the first try? In this video, we will cover Java Spring Framework certification practice questions, Spring Professional Exam Prep. Unlock your career potential with our comprehensive Java Spring Framework certification practice guide. In this video, we dive deep into 30 comprehensive practice questions covering core Spring, AOP, data JPA, security, and boot, designed to mirror the actual certification environment. Before we start, make sure to grab a pen and paper to track your score. Which annotation is used to indicate that a class is a configuration class and can contain @bean? Definition methods? Option A, @service. Option B, @component. Option C, @configuration. Option D, @repository. The correct answer is C. The @configuration annotation is a part of the Spring Context Library. When a class is marked with @configuration, it indicates that the object is a source of bean definitions. The Spring IOC container processes this class and generates bean definitions to be managed in the application context, while @component is a generic stereotype. @configuration allows for inter-bean dependencies by invoking other @bean methods in the same class, ensuring that the Spring container handles the lifecycle and singleton nature of those beans correctly through CGLIB proxies. In Spring AOP, what is a join point? Option A, a point during the execution of a program, such as the execution of a method or the handling of an exception. Option B, the code that is executed when a specific condition is met. Option C, the definition of where an aspect should be applied using expressions. Option D, the process of linking aspects with other application types. The correct answer is A. A join point represents a specific point in the application's execution flow. In Spring AOP, this is always the execution of a method, unlike Aspect J, which allows join points for field access or constructors. Spring AOP is limited to method execution join points only. It is the candidate spot where an advice, the action, could potentially be applied. The point cut is the expression that filters these join points. What is the purpose of the @Spring Boot application annotation? Option A, to enable only the MVC features of Spring. Option B, to define a configuration class and trigger auto-configuration and component scanning. Option C, to mark a class as a controller in a RESTful service. Option D, to enable global exception handling in the application. The correct answer is B. @Spring Boot application is a convenience annotation that combines 3 other annotations. @configuration marks the class as a source of bean definitions. @enable auto-configuration tells Spring Boot to start adding beans based on class path settings, other beans, and various property settings. And @component scan tells Spring to look for other components, configurations, and services in the package, allowing it to find the controllers. Which interface should you extend to get standard CRUD operations without writing any implementation code? Option A, CRUD repository. Option B, JPA base. Option C, entity repository. Option D, data repository. The correct answer is A. By extending CRUD repository, Spring Data JPA automatically generates the implementation of basic CRUD operations like save, find by ID, delete, etc. at runtime. For more advanced features like paging and sorting, one would extend paging and sorting repository. And for JPA-specific methods, like flushing the persistence context, JPA repository is used. In Spring Security, which filter is responsible for processing form-based login submissions? Option A. Basic Authentication Filter. Option B. Username Password Authentication Filter. Option C. Default Login Page Generating Filter. Option D. Security Context Persistence Filter. The correct answer is B. The username password authentication filter is responsible for processing authentication form submissions. It looks for username and password parameters by default and attempts to authenticate the user using the authentication manager. If successful, it populates the security context holder. What is the default scope of a Spring Bean? Option A. Prototype. Option B. Request. Option C. Singleton. Option D. Session. The correct answer is C. By default, every bean in Spring is a singleton. This means the Spring IOC container creates exactly one instance of the bean and shares it among all points where that bean is injected. This is efficient for stateless beans like services or controllers. Which annotation is used to extract values from the URL path in a Spring MVC controller? Option A. At request param. Option B. At path variable. Option C. At query param. Option D. At URL value. The correct answer is B. At path variable is used to bind a method parameter to a URI template variable. For example, in users id, the id portion can be captured using at path variable id. At request param, on the other hand, is used for query parameters like users id equals 1. Which annotation is used in a unit test to load the Spring application context? Option A. At Spring Test. Option B. At Context Configuration. Option C. At Extend with Spring Extension class. Option D. Both B and C. The correct answer is D. In Unit 5, at Extend with Spring Extension class is required to integrate the Spring Test context framework. At Context Configuration is then used to specify how to load the application context via classes or XML. At Spring Bootist is also a common choice as it includes both functionality for Spring Boot apps. Where does Spring Boot look for the application properties file by default? Option A. SRC main resources. Option B. SRC configs. Option C. WebINF. Option D. root. The correct answer is A. Spring Boot automatically searches for application properties or application.iml in the class path root, usually SRC main resources in Maven Gradle. The config package in the class path, the current directory, or a config subdirectory of the current directory. What is the default propagation behavior of the transactional annotation? Option A. Requires _new. Option B. Nested. Option C. Required. Option D. Supports. The correct answer is C. Required is the default propagation. It means the method must run within a transaction. If an existing transaction is already running, it joins that transaction. Otherwise, it starts a new one. This is suitable for the vast majority of business logic scenarios. What is the purpose of @ResponseBody? Option A. To bind the HTTP request body to an object. Option B. To indicate that the return value of a method should be bound to the web response body. Option C. To create a HTML view. Option D. To redirect the user to a new URL. The correct answer is B. @ResponseBody tells Spring that the returned object should be serialized directly into the HTTP response body, usually as JSON or XML, using a message converter, rather than looking for a view template, like JSP or Timeleaf. Which dependency injection method is recommended for mandatory dependencies? Option A. Setter injection. Option B. Field injection. Option C. Constructor injection. Option D. Interface injection. The correct answer is C. Constructor injection is recommended for mandatory dependencies because it ensures that the object is always created in a valid state. All required fields are initialized, allows for final fields, and makes the code easier to test without reflection. What does the @entity annotation define? Option A. A Spring Service class. Option B. A lightweight persistent domain object. A table in the database. Option C. A connection pool configuration. Option D. A data transfer object. The correct answer is B. @entity is a JPA annotation that specifies that the class is an entity and is mapped to a database table. Each instance of the class corresponds to a row in the table. Which Spring Boot starter provides support for building web applications, including RESTful applications, using Spring MVC? Option A. Spring Boot Starter API. Option B. Spring Boot Starter Tomcat. Option C. Spring Boot Starter Web. Option D. Spring Boot Starter MVC. The correct answer is C. Spring Boot Starter Web is the primary starter for web development. It includes Tomcat, the default embedded container, Spring MVC, and Jackson for JSON processing. Which advice type runs regardless of whether the method execution was successful or through an exception? Option A. @after returning. Option B. @after throwing. Option C. @after. Option D. @before. The correct answer is C. @after advice, also known as after finally, runs after a join point execution. Regardless of the outcome, it is typically used to release resources, similar to the finally block in Java. What is the role of the authentication manager in Spring Security? Option A. To store user details in the database. Option B. To define the password encoding strategy. Option C. To coordinate the authentication process and validate credentials. Option D. To handle cross-site request forgery, CSRF, protection. The correct answer is C. The Authentication Manager is the main strategy interface for authentication. It usually delegates the actual authentication to one or more authentication providers to verify the credentials, like username and password. Which annotation is used to inject a bean by matching its type? Option A, at inject. Option B, at resource. Option C, at autowired. Option D, at qualifier. The correct answer is C. At autowired is the most common annotation for dependency injection in Spring. It resolves dependencies by type. If multiple beans of the same type exist, at qualifier can be used to resolve the ambiguity by name. How does Spring Data JPA handle derived query methods like find by email, string email? Option A. It requires the developer to write the SQL in the application properties. Option B. It parses the method name and generates the query automatically. Option C. It uses reflection to find a matching stored procedure. Option D. It only works if the method is annotated with @query. The correct answer is B. Spring Data JPA uses a query creator mechanism that parses the method name based on a specific naming convention, e.g., starting with find by, read by, etc., and generates a JPQL query at runtime based on the entity's properties. What is the purpose of the internal resource view resolver? Option A. To resolve database connections. Option B. To map logical view names, like home, to physical resources, like JSP files. Option C. To handle internal server errors. Option D. To manage bean lifecycles inside the MVC container. The correct answer is B. Internal Resource View Resolver is a view resolver used to map the logical names returned by controller methods to actual JSP or HTML files by adding a prefix, like webinf, views, and a suffix, like .jsp. What does the @value annotation do in Spring? Option A. Assigns a hard-coded value to a variable. Option B. Injects values from properties files or environment variables into fields. Option C. Defines the cost of a transaction. Option D. Specifies the weight of a bean for sorting. The correct answer is B. @value is used for property injection. It allows you to read values from application properties, system properties, or environment variables using the $property.name syntax. Which AOP concept refers to an object that implements the aspects advice? Option A. Target object. Option B. AOP proxy. Option C. Introduction. Option D. Advisor. The correct answer is B. An AOP proxy is an object created by the AOP framework in order to implement the aspect contracts, advise method executions and so on. In Spring AOP, a proxy is either a JDK dynamic proxy or a CGLIB proxy. Which callback method is executed after all bean properties have been set but before the bean is ready for use? Option A. At predestroy. Option B. At postconstruct. Option C. On init. Option D. After properties set. The correct answer is B. At postconstruct is a standard Java annotation used on a method that needs to be executed after dependency injection is done to perform any initialization. It is the modern alternative to implementing the initializing bean interface. Which annotation is used to secure a specific method by requiring a specific role? Option A, at secured. Option B, at preauthorize. Option C, at roles allowed. Option D, all of the above. The correct answer is D. Spring Security supports all three. At secured is Spring specific. At roles allowed is the JSR 250 standard. And at preauthorize is a more powerful Spring annotation that supports spell Spring expression language. What happens if a runtime exception occurs inside a transactional method? Option A. The transaction is committed anyway. Option B. The transaction is automatically rolled back. Option C. The transaction is suspended. Option D. Spring waits for the developer to manually call rollback. The correct answer is B. By default, Spring's transaction management marks a transaction for rollback only for unchecked exceptions, runtime exception and its subclasses, and errors. Checked exceptions do not trigger a rollback unless specifically configured using the rollback for attribute. Which HTTP method is typically used to update an existing resource in a REST API? Option A, GET. Option B, POST. Option C, PUT. Option D, DELETE. The correct answer is C. PUT is used to replace an existing resource or create it if it doesn't exist at a specific URI. Patch is used for partial updates. And POST is generally used for creating new resources. What is the Spring Initializer? Option A. A tool to compile Java code. Option B. A web-based tool. Start.spring.io. Used to generate the structure of a Spring Boot project. Option C. The core engine of the JVM. Option D. A database migration tool. The correct answer is B. Spring Initializer is an online service provided by the Spring team to help developers quickly bootstrap a new Spring Boot project with all the necessary dependencies, build configurations, Maven, Gradle, and Java versions. What does @mockbean do in a Spring Boot test? Option A. It creates a real bean in the application context. Option B. It adds a Mockito mock to the application context, replacing any existing bean of the same type. Option C. It prevents the application context from loading. Option D. It mocks the database connection only. The correct answer is B. @mockbean is a Spring Boot specific annotation used to add Mockito mocks to the application context. If a bean of the same type already exists in the context, it is replaced by the mock. This is extremely useful for integration testing where you want to isolate a specific service. Which annotation is used to define a class as an aspect? Option A, at joinPoint. Option B, at pointCut. Option C, at aspect. Option D, at advice. The correct answer is C. The @aspect annotation marks a class as an aspect, which is a modularization of a concern that cuts across multiple objects. Inside this class, you define pointCuts and advices. What is the purpose of the @query annotation? Option A. To enable caching for a repository. Option B. To define a custom JPQL or native SQL query for a repository method. Option C. To specify the database username. Option D. To validate the data format before saving. The correct answer is B. A query allows developers to write their own custom queries, either JPQL or native SQL, when the derived query method naming convention is not sufficient for complex requirements. Which bean post processor is responsible for processing at auto-wired annotations? Option A. Common annotation bean post processor. Option B. Auto-wired annotation bean post processor. Option C. Required annotation bean post processor. Option D. Persistence annotation bean post processor. The correct answer is B. The auto-wired annotation bean post processor is a core part of Spring that scans for auto-wired and @value annotations on fields, methods, and constructors, and performs the actual dependency injection. Common annotation bean post processor handles standard JSR 250 annotations like @resource and @postconstruct. That concludes our 30-question deep dive into the Java Spring framework. How many did you get right? If you found this helpful, hit the like button and subscribe for more certification prep content. To get the complete practice exam set and boost your confidence, click the link in the description. For the full 500+ question bank and timed simulations, check the link in the description below.